This is pure evil. What we saw down here today is pure evil.
16 children locked in a 12 by 12 room for 4 years, covered in feces, covered in urine, covered in filth. Some of them so malnourished they were close to dying. Some of them so isolated they couldn't speak, couldn't write their own names, couldn't even read. And nobody knew. For 4 years, 16 children lived in what authorities are calling a house of horrors in a small town in Ohio, and the people keeping them there were supposed to be taking care of them. The people keeping them there were their own family. This is the Siders family case. And what happened behind closed doors in that home is one of the most disturbing cases of child abuse and exploitation you will ever hear. 16 children, ages 1 to 18, living in conditions that look like something from a third world country, not a house in America. Not in 2024, but it happened. And 4 family members are now facing over 100 years in prison. Let's start with what investigators found when they opened that door. The conditions were so bad that officers literally said they were about to fall through the floor. The house was deteriorating. The room where the children were kept was only 12 by 12 feet. 16 human beings, living in a space smaller than most bedrooms. They were covered in their own waste. Feces and urine covered the floor, the walls, their bodies. Some of these children were so malnourished that their bones were visible. They looked skeletal. Some were so sick, they were close to dying. When paramedics arrived, they had to transport 7 of the children to Columbus area hospitals immediately. And some of these children couldn't even communicate. They couldn't speak. They couldn't write. An 18-year-old girl found in that room couldn't spell her own name, couldn't read, couldn't write basic words. She's 18 years old and she has the literacy level of a young child. The other children were also not enrolled in school. They had no official records, no government documentation, no medical history. They were completely hidden from the system, completely isolated, completely alone. This went on for 4 years, starting in 2020. 4 years of captivity, 4 years of abuse, 4 years of isolation. And nobody knew. Hit the subscribe button right now. Hit the notification button, because what you're about to hear is absolutely devastating. These are real children, real suffering, real abuse that went undetected for years. Subscribe now. Now let's talk about the 4 people responsible. The grandfather, Gary Siders Sr., the grandmother, Christina, the father, Gary Siders Jr., and the mother, Elizabeth. But here's where this case gets even darker. Elizabeth may have been a victim herself. Elizabeth was married to Gary Siders Jr. in 2008. She was 15 years old. 15. And witnesses say that Gary met her when she was even younger, when she was 13. A grown man meeting a 13-year-old girl. The first child was born the same year they married, 2008, when Elizabeth was just 15 years old. And investigators found what they believe are restraint bruises on Elizabeth's arms, bruises that suggest she was being restrained, bruised that suggest abuse. So while Elizabeth is being charged as a perpetrator, there's a very real possibility that she herself is a victim of this family. Think about that. A woman who may have been groomed and manipulated starting at age 13, who was forced into marriage at 15, who may have been abused and controlled for years, and who is now facing charges for the abuse of children. How much of her participation was forced? How much of it was her own choice? How much of it was because she was afraid? These are questions that will likely come up in her trial. Now let's talk about Gary Siders Jr., the father, the one who may have been grooming and abusing women and children. On May 23rd, May 27th, May 29th, and May 31st, neighbors reported incidents of public indecency at the Omer Street home. That's the home where the children were being kept. Public indecency, which means Gary Jr. was exposing himself, performing sexual acts in view of others. And this was happening at the home where 16 children were locked in a 12 by 12 room. An arrest warrant was filed for Gary Jr. on June 29th for these public indecency charges. The warrant was served on June 30th, the same day the children were found. The same day. The police came to arrest Gary Jr. for public indecency, and when they served that warrant, they discovered the horrific truth. 16 children locked away, abused, neglected, isolated. Was Gary Jr. exposing himself to the children? Was he performing sexual acts in front of them? Investigators are still working through all of this, but the fact that public indecency charges were being filed at the exact moment children were discovered in this home is deeply disturbing. For 4 years, this family bounced around Ohio and Wisconsin, moving from county to county, from address to address, avoiding detection, avoiding documentation. The children were never enrolled in school. There were no medical records. There was no government paper trail. They were completely off the grid. And the children were so conditioned, so traumatized, so isolated, that they wouldn't speak up. They wouldn't try to escape. They wouldn't run down the street asking for help. They were trapped. Neighbors walked past the house. Neighbors drove down the street. Some of them even saw the Siders family going to Dollar General, but they never saw the children. The children were hidden, so completely hidden that people living doors away had no idea. But here's the thing that haunts the neighbors now. Some people in the community are saying they feel guilty. They feel like they should have known. They should have noticed something. They should have realized there were children in that house. One neighbor said he's racked with guilt. He wishes he could have done something. But how could he have known? The children were hidden so well that nobody in the community realized what was happening. The discovery only happened by accident. Police were conducting an unrelated investigation. They had a warrant for a completely different reason. They came to that address not expecting to find children. They came to serve an arrest warrant for Gary Jr. on public indecency charges. And when they opened that door, they found 16 children in hell. Authorities say that within 24 hours, some of these children could have been dead. 24 hours. That's how close we came to losing these children. That's how dire their medical condition was. Now all 4 Siders family members are in jail on $300,000 bond each. They're facing child endangerment charges, multiple counts. Gary Sr. and Gary Jr. are facing 17 counts each. Christina and Elizabeth are facing 16 counts each. If convicted, they could face over 100 years in prison. Over 100 years. That's how serious these charges are. That's how horrific what happened was. But here's what bothers investigators and prosecutors. The not guilty pleas. All 4 of them entered not guilty pleas. They're not confessing. They're not taking responsibility. They're fighting the charges. 4 people who locked 16 children in a 12 by 12 room for 4 years. 4 people who starved them, who neglected them, who abused them, and they're saying they didn't do it. The children are now in protective custody. They're receiving medical care. They're receiving psychological care. They're learning to speak, learning to read, learning to write, learning what it means to be safe. But the trauma they've experienced will stay with them forever. 4 years of their lives were stolen. 4 years of development were lost. 4 years of childhood were erased. And it happened in a small town in Ohio, in a house on Omer Street, in a 12 by 12 room, in a family that was supposed to take care of them. This is the Siders family case. 16 children, 4 perpetrators, over 100 years of potential prison time, and a community struggling to understand how this could happen in their town. If you have information about this case or about other cases of child abuse, contact your local law enforcement immediately. Call the police, call Child Protective Services, call the National Child Abuse Hotline. Do not stay silent. Children cannot protect themselves. They cannot escape abuse on their own. They need adults to notice. They need adults to care. They need adults to act. 16 children were rescued. 16 children are alive because police served a warrant for an unrelated charge. But how many other children are still hidden? How many other families are keeping children locked away? How many other houses of horror are there? We have to stay vigilant. We have to speak up. We have to protect children. To the 16 children of the Siders family case, we see you now. We see your strength. We see your resilience. And we will never forget what was done to you. We pray for your healing. We pray that you grow up safe. We pray that you grow up free. Justice is coming. The system is working. And the people who hurt you will face consequences for what they did. You are safe now.